The discovery. The beam of Vivian Reed's headlamp cut through the darkness, illuminating centuries of dust that danced in its light. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and stone, untouched for millennia. 6 weeks of careful excavation had led her team to this moment, standing before a door sealed with symbols unlike any they had catalogued before. "Ready, Dr. Reed?" asked her assistant, Marcus Jeffries, his dark fingers hovering over his tablet, poised to document whatever lay beyond. Vivian adjusted her glasses and nodded. At 37, she had led dozens of archaeological expeditions, but this site in northern Peru had defied all expectations. The temple complex they had uncovered predated known Incan settlements by at least 1,000 years, and showed architectural influences that seemed impossible for its time period. "Let the record show we're opening the inner chamber at 1427, June 18, 2025, she said, voice steady despite her racing heart. She nodded to the 2 other members of her team, Lucia Fernandez and Wei Huang, who carefully began to work the ancient stone mechanism they had spent days deciphering. The door slid open with a sound like a long-held breath finally released. Cool air rushed past them, carrying the faint scent of unfamiliar spices and something that reminded Vivian of lightning. "That's unusual," Wei murmured, checking the atmospheric sensors on his wrist. "No carbon dioxide spike. The air isn't stale." Marcus swept his light around the entrance. "Some kind of ancient ventilation system, maybe? Like the ones in Newgrange?" "Perhaps," Vivian said, though she knew those were typically simple shafts. This felt different. She took a hesitant step forward, her boots leaving prints in dust undisturbed for centuries. "Follow protocol. Masks on, please." The 4 researchers donned their protective masks and proceeded into the chamber with measured steps. Their lights revealed a circular room with a high domed ceiling adorned with intricate mosaics depicting celestial bodies. The walls were covered in the same unknown script they had found throughout the temple. But it was the center of the room that drew their collective gaze. A sarcophagus of polished black stone rested on a raised dais, surrounded by 7 pillars of white marble. Unlike Egyptian sarcophagi, this one was shaped like a perfect oval, with no visible seam or lid. "My God," Lucia whispered, her Chilean accent thickening with emotion. "This doesn't match any burial practices we've documented in this region." Vivian approached carefully, cataloging details aloud for the recording. The sarcophagus appears to be made of obsidian, perfectly polished. No tool marks visible. 7 pillars surrounded in a precise circle. The pillars are inscribed with the same script we found throughout the complex. Marcus was scanning the room with specialized equipment. "Dar. Reed, you need to see this. The readings are, well, they're impossible." Vivian glanced at his tablet and frowned. The thermal imaging showed the sarcophagus at a steady 36.5 degrees Celsius, human body temperature, while everything else in the room registered much cooler. "Check the equipment," she instructed Wei, who nodded and began recalibrating the sensors. Lucia was already photographing the pillars. "The script here is slightly different. I think it might be a narrative sequence." Vivian circled the sarcophagus, studying it from every angle. There were no visible mechanisms, no obvious way to open it. The surface was so perfectly polished that she could see her reflection, her copper hair escaped from its practical bun, the lines of concentration between her brows, the green eyes that her grandmother had always said could see right through people. "Dr. Reed," Wei called out, perplexed. "The equipment is functioning correctly. That temperature reading is accurate." Vivian's scientific mind raced through explanations: geothermal activity, chemical reactions, even bioluminescent fungi could generate heat. But nothing that would maintain such a precise temperature after thousands of years. She leaned closer, her breath fogging the immaculate surface. As she watched, the fog cleared not by evaporating, but by seemingly being absorbed into the stone itself. "Marcus, get me the spectrometer," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. Before he could comply, a subtle vibration ran through the chamber. Dust shifted on the floor, and a faint, musical tone emanated from the sarcophagus. "Everyone stay still," Vivian commanded, years of fieldwork instinct taking over. Could be structural instability. But the vibration faded, and the tone with it. The chamber settled into silence once more. "I think," Vivian said after a moment, "we need to consider calling in the advanced imaging team before we proceed further." It was against her nature to delay, curiosity had driven her career, but something about this room demanded caution. Lucia shook her head, her dark eyes wide with fascination rather than fear. "The imaging team is at least 3 days out. And look at this sequence I've been photographing. If I'm interpreting correctly, it's talking about a sleeper, not a deceased person. This might not be a tomb at all." Wei approached with the spectrometer, handing it to Vivian. "What do you think it is, then?" "I don't know," Vivian admitted, adjusting the settings on the device. "But I'm going to find out." As she aimed the spectrometer at the sarcophagus, her hand brushed against its surface. The contact lasted less than a second, but it was enough. The obsidian felt warm, like living skin, and pulsed once beneath her fingers. Vivian jerked back, but it was too late. The room filled with that same musical tone, louder now, and light began to emanate from the script carved into the pillars. The sarcophagus itself remained dark, but a thin line of golden light appeared around its circumference. "Everyone out, now!" Vivian shouted, backing away. "Marcus, get the emergency team on call." Wei and Marcus headed for the door, but Lucia remained transfixed by the glowing script. "It's changing," she breathed. "The language is changing before my eyes." Vivian grabbed her colleague's arm. "Lucia, we need to." The sarcophagus split open with a sound like breaking ice. The two halves slid apart smoothly, revealing what lay within. It was a woman. She appeared to be sleeping, her chest rising and falling with slow, shallow breaths. Her skin was a rich bronze, her features delicate yet strong, high cheekbones, a straight nose, full lips. Her hair was black as the obsidian that had encased her, arranged in hundreds of intricate braids adorned with tiny gold and jade beads. She wore a simple white garment that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. "Impossible," Marcus whispered from the doorway where he had frozen at the sight. Vivian's scientific mind rebelled. People did not survive burial for centuries. There had to be another explanation, a sophisticated automaton perhaps, or some kind of preservation technique that merely gave the appearance of life. And yet, the woman's eyelids fluttered. Her fingers, long, elegant fingers adorned with rings of an iridescent metal Vivian couldn't identify, twitched slightly. "She's alive," Lucia said, her voice a mixture of awe and scientific disbelief. "How can she be alive?" "We need medical support," Wei said, already pulling out his satellite phone. "And probably about a dozen other specialists." Vivian approached the sarcophagus again, driven by a curiosity that overrode caution. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s, with no signs of aging or deterioration. If this was some kind of preservation, it was beyond any technology known to science. As if sensing her presence, the woman's hand moved again, reaching outward. Without thinking, Vivian reached back. "Dr. Reed, I don't think that's wise," Marcus cautioned. But Vivian's fingers had already closed around the woman's. They were warm, with a strong pulse beating beneath the skin. At the contact, the woman's eyes flew open, eyes of such a deep amber they almost appeared golden, with pupils that contracted rapidly in the light. For a moment, neither moved. Then the woman's lips parted, and she spoke in a melodious language unlike anything Vivian had ever heard. The words seemed to shift in the air, rearranging themselves, until suddenly Vivian could understand them. "The time has come, then," the woman said, her voice surprisingly strong. "You have awakened me." "Who are you?" Vivian asked, aware that she should release the woman's hand but somehow unable to do so. "How is this possible?" The woman sat up with fluid grace, her braids chiming softly with the movement of the beads. She looked around the chamber, taking in the 4 stunned archaeologists and the equipment of a world 3 millennia removed from her own. I am Nephthra, High Priestess of Kalakmul, guardian of the 7th seal. Her strange eyes returned to Vivian. And you have the touch of destiny about you. What is your name, Awakener? Dr. Vivian Reed, she replied automatically. I'm an archaeologist. We study the past. Nephthra tilted her head. The past? Is that what I am to you? The past? You've been in this chamber for a very long time, Vivian explained gently, unsure how to convey the passage of centuries. The civilization you knew, it's gone. A shadow passed over Nephthra's face, but she showed no surprise. That was foretold. I was not meant to sleep forever, but until the stars aligned once more. She looked at each of them in turn. 4 witnesses. That too was written. Wei stepped forward, his scientific curiosity evidently overcoming his caution. How did you survive in there? What kind of technology preserved you? Nephthra smiled, an expression both mysterious and sad. Not technology as you understand it. Magic, you might call it, though that is not the right word either. She released Vivian's hand and attempted to stand, but swayed unsteadily. Vivian caught her by the shoulders. Careful. Your muscles must be incredibly weak after however long you've been in there. 3,000 years, by your calendar, Nephthra said matter-of-factly. Give or take a century. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If she was telling the truth, if this wasn't some elaborate hoax or mistake, then they were in the presence of someone who had lived before the rise of Rome, before classical Greece, when the pyramids were already ancient monuments. That's impossible, Marcus finally said. No biological organism could survive that long, even in suspended animation. Nephthra turned those unsettling amber eyes on him. Many things you believe impossible are merely forgotten knowledge. Your world has advanced in some ways, regressed in others. She placed a hand on the edge of the sarcophagus to steady herself. But we have little time for philosophy. My awakening means the cycle has begun again. What cycle? Lucia asked, her recorder still running, capturing every word. The return of those who would break the seals and unleash what lies beyond. Nephthra fixed her gaze on Vivian. They will have felt my awakening. They will come. Who will come? Vivian asked, feeling a chill despite the warmth of the chamber. The descendants of those who sought to control what should remain hidden. They have waited as long as I have, though not in sleep. Nephthra straightened, seeming to gather strength from some unseen source. We must leave this place. Now. As if in answer, a distant rumble shook the chamber. Dust rained down from the domed ceiling. That wasn't geological, Wei said, checking his instruments. That sounded like an explosion, Marcus finished grimly. Someone's blasting their way in. Vivian looked at Nephthra, whose face had hardened into a mask of determination. You knew this would happen. I hoped for more time, the priestess replied. But destiny rarely concerns itself with convenience. She reached out and gripped Vivian's arm with surprising strength. You awakened me, Vivian Reed. That creates a bond not easily broken. Will you help me? The rational part of Vivian's mind screamed that this was madness. Ancient priestesses didn't wake up from 3,000-year naps, and archaeological digs didn't get attacked by mysterious forces. But she had touched warm flesh where there should have been only dust and bone. She had seen the impossible with her own eyes. Another explosion rocked the chamber, closer this time. We need to evacuate, Wei said urgently. The structural integrity of these tunnels. Yes, Vivian decided, moving into action. We're leaving. All of us. She looked at Nephthra. Can you walk? The priestess nodded, her countless braids swaying with the movement. I have strength enough for what must be done. As they hurried from the chamber, Vivian felt a strange certainty settle over her. Whatever had begun with that simple touch, her hand against Nephthra's, was far from over. The weight of centuries pressed down on her shoulders, and the echoes of an ancient conflict reverberated through time, drawing her into its orbit. Behind them, the obsidian sarcophagus began to crumble into dust, as if its purpose, after 3,000 years, had finally been fulfilled. Awakening to a new world. The helicopter blade sliced through the humid air as Vivian stared out at the receding Peruvian landscape. Beside her, Nephthra sat rigidly, her amber eyes fixed on the strange metal contraption surrounding her, betraying no fear, only intense curiosity. "How does this bird of metal stay aloft?" she asked, voice barely audible above the rotor noise despite the headset Vivian had placed over her ears. "I sense no magic sustaining it." Vivian exchanged glances with Professor Thomas Harrington, the 55-year-old cultural anthropologist she'd called in a panic after they'd fled the dig site. Thomas's weathered face remained impassive, but his blue eyes sparkled with barely contained academic excitement. "It's called a helicopter," Vivian explained, deciding simplicity was best. "It uses science, not magic. Those blades create something called lift." Nephthra nodded thoughtfully. "In my time, we had theories of such principles. The scholars of Calakmul spoke of birds and how their wings commanded the air." She ran her fingers over the window. "Your people have mastered much." Across from them, Marcus and Lucia sat in uncomfortable silence. Wei had stayed behind to coordinate with local authorities about the attack on their dig site, though Vivian had instructed him to mention nothing about their extraordinary find. "The university safe house is about 20 minutes out," Thomas told them, checking his watch. "Remote enough to give us privacy, secure enough to keep unwanted visitors away. And equipped enough to run some tests," Marcus added, eyeing Nephthra with undisguised scientific curiosity. Vivian shot him a warning glance. "We're not treating her like a lab specimen, Marcus." "Of course not," he replied, looking slightly abashed. "But you have to admit, Dr. Reed, she represents the most extraordinary archaeological discovery in history. If she's really been in suspended animation for 3 millennia. "I do not object to your examinations," Nephthra interrupted, her Spanish now remarkably fluent after just hours of exposure. "I too seek understanding of how this world differs from the one I left behind." She turned to Vivian. "But first, we must discuss what pursues us." Thomas leaned forward. "You mentioned an organization at the dig site. The Eternal Order, you called them?" Nephthra's face darkened. "They are the descendants of those who opposed my order. In my time, they were led by King Atok, who sought to use the power we guarded for conquest." Her fingers twisted the strange iridescent rings she wore. "I see now that while I slept, they remained vigilant." "That doesn't explain the explosives," Lucia said, speaking up for the first time since they'd boarded. "Or the armed men." "Power adapts to the age it exists within," Nephthra replied simply. "As must I." The helicopter began its descent toward a clearing near a sprawling structure nestled against the foothills of the Andes. The university's private research retreat had been built in the 1970s, a secluded compound where academics could work without interruption. Now it would serve as their sanctuary. Once they had landed and moved inside, Thomas immediately began making arrangements for supplies and additional security, calling in favors from decades of fieldwork. Lucia set up their equipment in the main study, while Marcus converted one of the bedrooms into an impromptu medical examination room. Vivian led Nephthra to the compound's central courtyard, where a fountain burbled peacefully amid tropical plants. The priestess walked with increasing steadiness, her body seemingly recovering its strength with miraculous speed. "I know this must be overwhelming," Vivian said, watching as Nephthra studied a hummingbird darting among the flowers. 3,000 years. I can't imagine. Time passed differently in my sleep, Nephthra replied. For me, it was like a single night filled with dreams of ages turning. She caught Vivian's gaze. But yes, this world is strange to me. So much metal. So many people. The very air tastes different. We've damaged our world, Vivian admitted. Polluted it. Changed it. Yet it endures, Nephthra observed. As all things must. She dipped her fingers in the fountain, watching the ripples spread. You have questions. Ask them. Vivian sat on the fountain's edge. How did you survive? Biological organisms can't remain in stasis for thousands of years. My order discovered what you might call a space between spaces, Nephthra explained. A state of being neither fully in this world nor beyond it. My physical form remained here, preserved by the sarcophagus, while my consciousness dwelled elsewhere. She tilted her head. Your science has not yet found this threshold, though I sense it has glimpsed it. Quantum states, Vivian murmured. Schrödinger's paradox. Names for things not yet understood, Nephthra said with a small smile. But close enough. And the language issue? You're speaking perfect Spanish after just hours of exposure. Nephthra touched her temple. My order was gifted with what you might call accelerated cognition. Language patterns form quickly for us. It was necessary for our work as record keepers and guardians. Before Vivian could press further, Thomas appeared in the courtyard doorway, his expression troubled. We may have a problem, he said. The Peruvian authorities are reporting that unknown parties have seized control of our dig site. And I've just received a rather concerning call from the university's board of trustees, asking pointed questions about our unauthorized extraction of cultural artifacts. We didn't extract any artifacts, Vivian protested. Thomas's eyes shifted meaningfully to Nephthra. Didn't we? I am no artifact, Nephthra stated firmly. And these people who now control your excavation, describe them. Official looking, according to Wei's report. Credentials from various international heritage organizations, but Wei said something felt off about them. Thomas ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair. They've established a secure perimeter and are denying access to everyone, including the local archaeological authority. The Eternal Order works through legitimate facades, Nephthra said. They have had millennia to position themselves within your structures of power. Vivian felt a chill despite the warm evening air. This sounds like conspiracy theory territory. All conspiracies begin as truth, Nephthra replied. Before becoming distorted by fear or ambition. She rose from the fountain. I should see what your colleague Marcus has prepared. The sooner we establish my nature to your satisfaction, the sooner you may believe what I tell you about the danger we face. After Nephthra had followed Thomas inside, Vivian remained by the fountain, trying to make sense of everything that had happened in the past 24 hours. Her rational mind still struggled with the reality of Nephthra's existence, yet the evidence of her own senses was undeniable. Her satellite phone buzzed, a message from Wei, strange men asking questions in town. Not just authorities. Be careful. With a growing sense of unease, Vivian went inside to find Marcus setting up basic medical equipment while Nephthra sat calmly on an examination table. Just standard tests, Marcus was explaining. Heart rate, blood pressure, temperature. Nothing invasive. Proceed, Nephthra said, extending her arm. Though I suspect your instruments may give unusual readings. Marcus attached the blood pressure cuff and began pumping. His eyebrows rose as he watched the gauge. That can't be right, he muttered, deflating the cuff and trying again. Your blood pressure is 90/50ths. That's extremely low. Yet I function perfectly, Nephthra observed. Your body temperature is 35 degrees Celsius, Marcus continued, reading the thermometer. Below normal human baseline. He looked at Vivian. By medical standards, she should be showing signs of hypothermia. Perhaps your standards apply only to your time, not mine, Nephthra suggested. Marcus's scientific curiosity was now fully engaged. I'd like to take a small blood sample, if you'll permit it. Nothing that would cause harm. Nephthra nodded her assent, watching with interest as Marcus prepared a syringe. When he inserted the needle into her arm, it bent immediately, as if striking metal. What the? Marcus stared at the deformed needle. Ah, Nephthra said, looking mildly surprised. I had forgotten. The preparation ritual before my sleep involved infusing my body with certain elements. For preservation. Your skin deflected surgical steel, Marcus said incredulously. What elements exactly are we talking about? Before she could answer, Lucia burst into the room. You need to see this, she said urgently, holding up her tablet. It's all over the news networks. The screen showed aerial footage of their dig site, now surrounded by vehicles and equipment. A reporter stood at a hastily established perimeter, speaking excitedly. What authorities are calling one of the most significant archaeological discoveries of the century. The Howell Institute for Historical Research has taken over the site under the authority of the International Heritage Protection Act, citing concerns about improper excavation techniques that may have damaged irreplaceable artifacts. The Howell Institute? Vivian repeated. I've never heard of them. They don't exist, Thomas said grimly from the doorway. At least, they didn't until about 6 hours ago. I've checked with every major archaeological association. Nephthra stepped down from the examination table. They move quickly. We must do the same. The news footage changed to show a distinguished-looking man in his 60s, with silver hair and penetrating dark eyes, addressing a press conference. As director of the Howell Institute, I can assure you that our only concern is protecting this remarkable discovery for all humanity, he was saying smoothly. Unfortunately, the preliminary team led by Dr. Vivian Reed appears to have removed several artifacts before proper documentation could take place. We are working with authorities to locate these items and return them to their rightful context. That's a lie. Vivian exclaimed. We didn't take anything except our own equipment. Who is that man? Thomas asked, studying the screen. Nephthra had gone very still, her amber eyes fixed on the image. His face has changed, but I would know those eyes anywhere, she whispered. That is Darius. He was Atak's chief sorcerer in my time. That's impossible, Marcus scoffed. No one lives for 3,000 years. Not as I have, Nephthra agreed. But there are other methods of extending life. Dark methods. Methods that require renewal. A heavy silence fell over the room as they absorbed the implication. You're saying this man is 3,000 years old? Lucia asked, her voice wavering between skepticism and fear. I am saying his essence has endured, passed down through a chosen bloodline, Nephthra clarified. Each generation, a vessel is prepared to receive the accumulated knowledge and purpose of those who came before. Not true immortality, but a continuity of will and memory. Vivian sank into a chair, trying to process this new impossibility. Even if what you're saying is true, why? Why maintain this vendetta across millennia? Because what my order protected was worth such devotion, Nephthra said simply. And what Atak, what Darius, desires has not changed, power beyond measure. Thomas cleared his throat. This is all rather difficult to accept without evidence. Nephthra nodded. I understand your doubt. It is the natural shield of a scholarly mind. She turned to Vivian. Show me your world's knowledge. Your internet, I believe you called it. I must learn quickly what has changed and what has remained the same. For the next several hours, Vivian watched in amazement as Nephthra absorbed information at an astonishing rate. The priestess moved through digital encyclopedias, historical texts, and scientific papers with preternatural speed, occasionally asking clarifying questions that revealed a depth of understanding that seemed impossible for someone from the ancient world. Your quantum physics, she remarked at one point, comes closest to describing the principles my order understood. Though you approach it through mathematics rather than consciousness. As night fell, Lucia and Marcus retired to prepare dinner and check security, while Thomas pored over satellite images of the dig site, tracking the growing presence there. Vivian sat beside Nephthra, who had finally set aside the tablet and was gazing out the window at the stars. At least these remain constant, the priestess said softly. Though you see them differently now. So many names, so many myths forgotten and replaced. What happened to your civilization? Vivian asked. We found so little trace of it. We were never numerous, Nephthra replied. And after the war with Atok, much was deliberately erased. She traced a constellation with her finger against the glass. Some things are not meant to be remembered. Is that why you were put into that sleep? To ensure something would be forgotten. Nephthra turned to her, those amber eyes seeming to glow in the dim light. No. I was preserved to ensure something would be remembered when it was needed again. She hesitated. Since you awakened me, I have been experiencing visions. Fragments of memory and prophecy, intertwined. What kind of visions? I see a chamber beneath the one where you found me. I see the 7 seals, still intact. And I see. She paused, her brow furrowing. I see you, Vivian Reed, standing before them. Your hand outstretched, as it was when you awakened me. A shiver ran down Vivian's spine. What does it mean? I do not yet know. But I believe your finding me was not chance, but necessity. Nephthra took Vivian's hand, examining the lines on her palm. There is a pattern here that reminds me of the 7th seal. Before Vivian could respond, Thomas burst into the room. We have visitors, he said tersely. 2 black SUVs just turned onto the access road. No headlights. Vivian jumped to her feet. How did they find us so quickly? The rings, Nephthra said suddenly, looking down at her hands. Of course. They were never merely ornamental. She began twisting one of the iridescent bands, manipulating it in a complex pattern until it emitted a soft click and fell open. Inside was a crystalline structure that pulsed with a faint light. A beacon, she said, dismay evident in her voice. Designed to activate upon my awakening. She quickly removed all 7 rings, placing them in a metal container that Thomas hastily provided. This will not shield them completely, but it may confuse the signal. Marcus appeared in the doorway. They're 3 minutes out. What's the plan? Vivian looked to Nephthra, whose face had taken on a resolute expression. We cannot fight them directly, not yet, the priestess said. I am still regaining my strength, and you are not prepared for what they can do. She turned to Thomas. Is there another way out of this place? There's a maintenance tunnel that leads to a secondary road, he confirmed. Built during the Cold War as an escape route. But we'll need transportation on the other side. I'll call for a second helicopter, Lucia offered, already reaching for her phone. No, Nephthra countermanded. No technology they can track. We must go on foot to the nearest settlement and find another way. Vivian quickly gathered essential supplies while Marcus and Thomas erased all digital evidence of their research. Lucia packed food and medical equipment into backpacks. As they prepared to leave, Nephthra placed a hand on the wall of the compound, closing her eyes in concentration. A subtle vibration ran through the structure, and for a moment, Vivian thought she saw symbols similar to those in the temple glowing beneath the priestess's palm. What are you doing? She asked. Creating confusion, Nephthra replied. An old technique. It will make our presence here seem dispersed. Many signals instead of 5 distinct ones. She opened her eyes. It will not hold them long. They slipped into the maintenance tunnel just as headlights swept across the compound's main entrance. Vivian led the way with a flashlight, trying to ignore the claustrophobic press of earth above them. Where will we go? Marcus whispered as they emerged onto a narrow track half a kilometer from the compound. North, Nephthra said without hesitation. The visions are pulling me north. There's a small trading post about 5 miles up this road, Thomas said. Frequented by locals rather than tourists. We might be able to arrange discreet transportation there. As they set off into the night, Vivian found herself walking beside Nephthra, whose steps had become eerily silent, as if she were floating just above the ground. You did something back there, Vivian said quietly. Something not explained by science. Nephthora gave her a sidelong glance. Your world has not abandoned magic, Vivian Reed. It has simply forgotten how to recognize it. The boundaries between what you call science and what my people understood as natural law are not as fixed as you believe. If that's true, why can't most people do what you do? The same reason most cannot compose symphonies or solve complex equations, Nephthora replied. Aptitude, training, and understanding. She looked up at the star-filled sky. But there is more to it. My order was augmented. Changed by our covenant with forces beyond ordinary perception. A distant explosion made them all turn. The compound they had left was now illuminated by flames, black smoke rising into the night sky. They're destroying the evidence, Thomas said grimly. No, Nephthora contradicted, her face grim. They're sending a message. To me. She quickened her pace. We must hurry. Dawn will make us visible, and they will have aircraft searching by then. As they continued their flight through the darkness, Vivian felt reality shifting around her. 6 days ago, she had been a respected archaeologist with a promising dig and conventional understanding of the world. Now she was a fugitive, accompanying an impossible woman from the ancient past, pursued by an organization that apparently spanned millennia. And strangest of all, despite every scientific principle she had built her career upon, she found herself believing Nephthora. Just before dawn, as they approached the trading post Thomas had mentioned, Nephthora suddenly stopped in her tracks, her head tilted as if listening to something none of them could hear. What is it? Vivian asked. A resonance, Nephthora murmured. Something nearby that belongs to my time. She pointed to a rise about half a kilometer east of the road. There. Vivian exchanged glances with Thomas, who nodded reluctantly. A quick detour, then. But we need to reach the trading post before full light. They followed Nephthora up the slope, through dense vegetation that made progress difficult. At the top, they found a small clearing dominated by a stone marker so weathered it was almost indistinguishable from a natural formation. Nephthora knelt before it, brushing away centuries of accumulated growth to reveal faint carvings similar to those in the temple. As her fingers traced the symbols, they began to glow with the same golden light that had surrounded her sarcophagus. A waypoint, she said, satisfaction in her voice. Created by my order to mark the path. She placed both palms against the stone, and the glow intensified, spreading through the ground beneath them in a complex pattern of interconnected lines. Ley lines, Thomas breathed. Just like the theoretical models suggest. Not theoretical, Nephthora corrected. And very much active. She stood, looking more energized than she had since awakening. This changes our plans. There is a network we can use, safer than your roads, faster than your vehicles. A network of what? Marcus asked. Passages, Nephthora replied. Created long before my time, adopted by my order. She gestured to the stone marker, which had now shifted slightly, revealing a dark opening beneath. They exist at the intersection of what you understand as dimensions. Lucia backed away. You want us to go in there? Underground? Not underground, Nephthora said. Beyond ground. The difference is significant. She looked at Vivian. I know this is much to ask on faith alone. But time grows short, and this path will take us where we need to go. Vivian stared at the opening, every instinct honed by years of scientific training telling her to be skeptical, to demand evidence, to seek rational explanations. But another part of her, perhaps the part that had first led her to archaeology, to uncovering the mysteries of the past, urged her forward. Where exactly will it take us? She asked. To the next marker, Nephthora said. In what you now call Bolivia. Near the place where the final battle with Awoke was fought. Her amber eyes held Vivian's gaze. Where the answers you seek await. Thomas adjusted his pack. The Eternal Order will have the roads and airports watched. If there's another way to travel, I'm inclined to try it. Marcus and Lucia exchanged uncertain glances, but nodded their agreement. Vivian took a deep breath and stepped toward the opening. Then lead the way, High Priestess. Nephthra smiled, the first genuine smile Vivian had seen from her, and took Vivian's hand. Together, Awakener. That is how this journey must proceed. As they stepped into the darkness, the golden light surrounded them, and Vivian felt the world as she knew it fall away. For an instant, she glimpsed spaces between spaces, realities folded upon realities, and understood that the universe was far stranger and more wonderful than she had ever imagined. When she turned back, the opening had vanished, and with it, any chance of returning to the life she had known before. Ahead lay only the unknown, guided by the hand of a woman who had slept for 3,000 years until awakened by her touch. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.